Kiki Classic Rock.
He has worked with several iconic and amazing musicians, including Cheap Trick, Ronnie James Dio, Ace Frehley. I know this list is long. Enough's Enough, Nelson, Joan Jett, and, yes, you guessed it, Kiss. From fan club member to music promoter, he is currently working on a documentary about the late Kiss guitarist Eric Carr. Time to go deep about the amazing artists he has worked with. Everyone, give it up for David Snowden. David, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Thank you, Kiki.
Now, David, the Kiss show was in Mansfield, Mass. last night. Before we get into everything, the reviews that I read, I quickly went through them. They were amazing. Do you happen to know anyone who went to that show?
Oh, I had a lot of people send me some emails, and everybody seemed to love the show.
Yeah.
You got to hand it to them. Almost 50 years in, the band still delivers every night.
And, you know, it really irritates me when people, just go after the whole voice tracking thing. Who cares? To me, who cares?
Oh, I'm absolutely with you. Kiss has always been about the big show.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. I mean, the music is the foundation to it all, because if they didn't have great music, they certainly wouldn't have lasted this long.
No, absolutely.
They've influenced everybody. I mean, Garth Brooks, country star, he's out there and he's doing basically a Kiss country show. Motley Crue, what did they come out of? They came right out of the ashes of 70s Kiss.
Yeah.
So,
and when you think about it, Motley Crue, and then you talk about all of those glam hair bands, right? I mean, they put on the big show just like Kiss did and still does.
Absolutely. Bon Jovi went on tour with Kiss in 1984, and by the time 1986 came along, he's headlining. He was doing a big Kiss show. He's coming up out of the stage just like Kiss did in 1979.
That's crazy.
It's great. I mean, they've influenced so many people in the rock world. Even when you watch the Super Bowl every year, the halftime show, it doesn't matter what artist it is. They're out there putting on a big show. And if it wasn't for a band like Kiss that came out, a lot of people laughed at them in the 70s. By the end of the 70s, people kept saying, it's a little kids band. It's all about the show. But they came back within a couple of years and proved to people it wasn't just a show. It was about the music as well.
Isn't it funny, David, how Kiss is really, people have loved them, hated them. There really isn't a middle of the road for that band when you really sit down and think about it. It's been about they're great, they're not, I don't like them, I love them tremendously. It's so strange to me because I just think they've done a great job, and like Journey, they've been able to keep this train going for so decades. And you got to hand it to them just for that alone, I think.
I mean, hey, not every album you're going to put out is going to be a home run.
Right.
But it's all about the new music. And, I mean, unfortunately, it's not about that anymore, but it used to be.
Yeah.
I know that when I'd go out and see bands when I was younger, I couldn't wait to hear the new songs. Now, you go to see the Rolling Stones, they want to play a new song. I want to go to the bathroom.
I know. We want to hear Brown Sugar. I mean, that's just the way it is.
That's right. I'd rather hear them play Brown Sugar 10 times than to play one new song.
Isn't it? It's crazy. It really is crazy. Now, David, we're going to go ahead and get into your story. You were very young when you started working on the fan club for Kiss. It was 1982, and the following year for Kiss was a very pivotal one. They appeared for the first time without makeup on MTV, and Kiss is an iconic mega band. You started the newsletter for them called The Kiss Revolution, which got the attention of Keith LaRue, a longtime associate of the band. He reached out to you to form a new fan club. Now, how old were you when this all started, and how did Keith find you?
Keith actually found me through an advertisement in the back of Circus Magazine.
Circus Magazine. Oh, my gosh. So
yeah,
funny.
Back in the days when you'd have to go to the newsstand to find out what your favorite band did.
Yep.
And I mean, at the time, 1982, I was still in high school. I was, 17 years old. And when we incorporated our first business, which we called the Kiss Force, which is what the fan club was called, we had to have Keith's father do it because both of us were under the legal age to incorporate a business in the state of Massachusetts.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, the idea was I was doing that newsletter. It got the attention of the band so much so that their management company, Glickman Marks, sent me a check to make sure that they got every issue because they wanted to see it.
Oh, come on.
And in true Gene Simmons style, yes, I cashed a check. I did make a copy of it, but that was that's what they did because they were a very fan-oriented band. And when Keith came to me, he was like, this could be so much bigger. The Kiss Army had went away in 1980. This is time to, put this together, take it to the next level. Kiss was on an uprise with, Lick It Up, had just went gold, which was their first gold album in 3 years. So it was a big thing for Kiss. And, we got together, we started to do it. I started knocking on a lot of doors and kicking on a few that I had to, but we started getting the interviews. And that's what I was responsible for, was the content of that, to make sure that I knew what not only Kiss was doing, but anybody who was in the band. Because to me, I always looked at it like when Ace Frehley left the band, we not only had a new Ace Frehley record to look forward to, but we also had a new Kiss record to look forward to.
Yeah.
It was kind of nice because, much like I know Journey's one of your favorite bands, as band members kind of came and gone or did side projects, how exciting was that?
Yes, it was. It really was at that time. I mean, oh my gosh. But now, did you have the ability to really connect with those guys in the band with what you were doing?
Oh, absolutely. I always say that Eric Carr was probably one of the biggest supporters of the band. He was the drummer who replaced Peter Criss in 1980.
Yep.
But even more so, Gene Simmons, he was the guy that when you went backstage, he came over right away. He asked, when's the next newsletter coming out? When's the fan club package coming out? What are people saying? Hey, we need a letters page. I want to know what people are thinking, what people are, what people want from Kiss. He was very involved in that sort of aspect. He had a lot of questions.
So, did you ever have a difficult time answering those questions for Gene? Because I can only imagine Gene is Mr. Businessman. So did he ever push you to the point you're like, I got this?
No, actually, I thought that Gene always came across as being one of the more caring people. I guess to give you an example, like 2 weeks ago, I was out with a friend of mine, and he said to me, if you could hang out with a member of Kiss for one day, who would you hang out with? And I was like, oh, Gene Simmons, absolutely, because here's a guy who really cares. I mean, he may come across as this arrogant person to a lot of people, but deep down inside, when you have a conversation with Gene or you do something with Gene or something that's very important to him, he wants to know about it, and he'll ask you questions. And I never felt intimidated or anything. I mean, sure, as a 18-year-old kid, you're standing there thinking, God, I hope I don't crap my pants because I'm staying here with Gene Simmons, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I can't even imagine. It must have just been crazy for you. But now, how about Gene Simmons in the 80s to Gene Simmons in the 2000s? And how much, it's been a lot. There's been a lot that's gone on with Gene. So were you surprised with some of the allegations and things like that? I mean, because I'm sure you didn't see that then.
No, but I don't pay a whole lot of attention to that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of, when you're a fan of a band, and I think that was one of the key factors that made me really good doing fan clubs, was the fact that I was a big fan of music. Regardless of the band or the genre of music, you got into it, you liked it, and you start to realize that these guys, they're people. They
Right.
get up every morning like we do. Some days they have good days. Some days they have bad days. Some days they do things that really upset you. It's just one of those things. So when things come out about Gene, I don't pay any attention. With any celebrity or artist that I've ever worked with, sometimes down the line you will have a few of them that will call me and say, hey, I never did do that, or I never did say that. They, this magazine took it this way and they ran with this story, but it's all publicity. And that's all that really matters.
And that happens a lot, right? I mean, somebody will say something and it gets completely twisted into something else, unless it's on video. Then you can't really change that.
Well, and again, that's just everyday life. It's a he said, she said sort of thing.
Now, you were around the band, like I said, when they took off their makeup. And I remember that was such a huge, huge deal. Now, did you know they were doing this before it actually happened, or were you just as surprised as the rest of us?
No, actually, I did get a heads up from Glickman Marks that was the management company that Kiss was using at the time. They also did their advertising and things. I had basically established some relationships with some of the people at the office. And they told me that Kiss was looking to take off the makeup, to go out. They did a photo shoot. They were going to do that. Don't put anything out yet. Our big push was going to be on MTV. So they gave me the inside word without me being able to say anything to anybody.
Right, right.
But, it was different then because, with the internet, as soon as something happens, somebody wants to post about it. Back then, even if they would have, to say to somebody 3 months before it happens, by the time you can write up an article, get it all set up, send it to a printer, get it out, mail it to people, it's still not getting to them before then.
Right.
That's like a lot of times with the magazines back then, and even with music, you were listening to the music 6 months before it came out. So by the time it finally hit radio and it was brand new music to other people, it was really old to you.
Yeah. So, everything's digital now. It takes a nanosecond to get a piece of information to someone. So tell us, I read something about you. You had 27 people in your house at one time getting everything together to mail it out. What was it like? Bring us to the nitty gritty of what it was like to mail out these newsletters and get them to people.
Well, at one point, I did have 27 people working out of my house, and that was just prior to the Kiss reunion tour. I had gotten back into doing the Kiss merchandising because I had left it for a little while because I went on to, when I left the Kiss stuff, I went on to Vinnie Vincent and then Brittany Fox and a whole bunch of other fan clubs. But by the mid-'90s, I saw that a Kiss reunion was going to happen. So I jumped into doing merchandising again, and it really started to take off to the point where I had Kiss merchandise in every single room of my house. And I would get up, and I was still working a full-time job. I would get up, leave for work. I'd have 5 guys come in. I'd come home from work. There was 6 new different guys coming in with the first 5 leaving. And then on the weekend, we had different guys working. I mean, it became almost a 24/7 sort of thing. But
how about when you first started doing the newsletter? Was that all on you? Were you doing that all by yourself, or was it you and Keith? Like, how did that work?
The newsletters, I always did it was always myself. And this was like kind of at the start of the computer age. This will really show you how old I am. My first computer was a Radio Shack Tandy computer.
Oh my gosh, you still have it? It's worth some money. Just saying.
I don't even know if Radio Shack's even still around.
It's not. I know. It's so sad.
Yeah, and that's how long ago that was. And I was setting a lot of the type by hand. And then you would have to go to a light table. You'd lay it out. And what it actually did was it kind of put me on course without me realizing it to becoming a graphic designer.
Oh, okay.
Because I was learning how to kind of do it myself, and there was no internet where I could go to a YouTube video and go, hey, how do you lay out a newsletter?
You're right.
I had to just figure it out. And I eventually started getting into, I had a light table, which was basically a fluorescent light that my father brought home from work, and we turned it upside down and put it on a table. That was my light table, and I put graph paper down, and we started figuring it out.
It's amazing. Amazing. Now, did the post office love you or hate you?
Oh, the post office absolutely hated me. And they hated me so much that back in the late 80s, I actually had the home telephone number to the Postmaster General here in Baltimore.
Oh, my gosh.
Because we were running so much stuff in and out of that post office that they were like, this is ridiculous. They wanted us to get a postal meter.
Oh,
but to get a postal meter back then, it cost you more money.
I could imagine.
You had the monthly fee for that. Plus, they wanted to send you supplies that they charged you for. So by the time you got finished, you were like, you know what? I can stand at the post office every day for an hour, and it still is cheaper than me running this postal meter every day.
It's so funny. What is the most amount of newsletters you think you mailed in a week? Approximate.
In a week?
Yeah.
I would say over 200,000.
What?
Yeah, I mean, it was not...
200,000, and you did this yourself?
Well, I had people that helped me.
Oh, my gosh.
We had interns. We went from working in my bedroom at my parents' house to moving to their basement in their house to getting an office. Then we moved into a retail location because it seemed like it only made sense to open a retail location and sell some of the stuff to the public and still do our work.
All right. Now, the merchandise from back then, way back in the day, we're talking early 80s, do you still have any of that merch?
I have select pieces that mean stuff to me.
Yeah.
I'm not I say this, and people who really know me will say that, no, that's not true. I don't like to think of myself as being a sentimental person. And if somebody comes to my house and they see something that they want, I don't have a problem with saying to them, well, here you go, take it with you. Let me find a bag to put that in or a box or something. Because if it's going to bring somebody else a whole lot of pleasure, I just assume give it to them.
Well, that's really nice. So we're all coming over, and we're going to pick through your Kiss merchandise from the 80s. That's what we're going to do. We're all going to David's house.
And my wife will have no problem holding the door for you, pointing out different things that you could take with you besides what I already told you could.
Do you have any autographs, though, that you would never give up?
A few. I have a really nice picture from Vinnie Vincent that he actually signed to me to David with love and admiration. That means a lot to me. I have the original 2-page type letter of recommendation that he wrote for me so that other bands would let me do their fan clubs or at least consider me to do their fan clubs. Those are pretty big deals. That's what I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, I have, I don't have the original check, but when I got married in 1983, Joan Jett did come to the wedding, and she was very generous with what she gave. I did keep a copy of that check, and I kept a copy of the little note that she wrote, to us, which was very sweet and very heartfelt.
I love her, but we'll talk about her in a few minutes because I freaking love Joan Jett. But anyway, we'll talk about Vinnie Vincent since you brought him up, because in 1986, he asked you to run his fan club. Now, Vinnie left Kiss. I think he left unwillingly. I don't know if he wanted to go, but that was in 1984, and he formed Vinnie Vincent Invasion. Now, we all hear lots of things about Vinnie, and over the past few years, he's scheduled shows, he's canceled them. Vinnie came to your house. I think he had dinner. What was Vinnie like when you worked alongside of him?
Oh, I loved Vinnie. I thought, and I still believe this, he is single-handedly the most talented and creative musician I have ever worked with. The guy could play incredible guitar. He could write lyrics and songs, the way that he put his words together, the way that he phrased things. And, I mean, talk about making an instrument sing. I mean, the guy was just so musical. And, I mean, I really loved the guy. He had a great personality. He was very caring. But I will say this, was he crazy? Absolutely.
So he was crazy back then, too.
Yes. And that's why, like, when, you know, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion split up, before they split up, I had went to Vinnie and I said, Vinnie, look, I have some marketing ideas that we could use for your band. We could take this mailing list that we've got with fans, instead of just sending them sample records that we did back in the 80s. I mean, like people who got the first Vinnie Vincent pink vinyl 45, that was through mailing list that I gave to Chrysalis. Wow. Then we sent them out for the second record. But I told him, why don't we take this and try to incentivize, you know, fans to get them to actually do things for the band, write to the magazines, call MTV, do things to push the band to the next level. And he'd always say to me, you know, David, I wish we had the money. And it was like, dude, you do have the money. Instead of going out and having dinner and saying, charge it to the record company, why not use that money to put it into this, to push the band to the next level? And what was really nice about that was after, you know, Vinnie Vincent's band split up, I had a meeting with Chrysalis. We discussed it. I turned over a lot of things to them for Slaughter, explained to them what was going on. Then I met with a manager in Philadelphia who was managing Brittany Fox. And that guy was so on board, and he was so tuned into it. And that's what he said to me. He's like, God, David, he goes, this is everything that my band has ever wanted. And he had ideas. And we were able to take a band, Brittany Fox, that came out of the ashes of like Cinderella, because two of those guys were originally in Cinderella. And, you know, were put aside when Cinderella got signed, formed the Brittany Fox, and we had major success with that.
And also Mark Slaughter, who was the lead singer in The Invasion, and my friend Robert Fleischman, there was that whole thing where Robert was the lead singer and then Mark came in. Now, were you involved in, did you know what was going on at that time with that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you did? Oh, my gosh.
Well, Robert, from what everybody in the band and management, record company, what they were saying was Robert really didn't want to tour. Whether that was true or not, I don't know, because up until that point, I had not spoken to Robert.
Okay.
But they did want to hire somebody, and they knew that they were going to have to replace Robert. And they talked to a couple different vocalists. Vinnie wanted some guy that he was from overseas, which by the time you work out all the work visas and all that sort of stuff, the English was not even the guy's first language, which that was a problem too. Then he had this guy from Las Vegas that Dana brought in. Dana Strum he knew of Mark Slaughter through some stuff. Ironically enough, through my KISS connections, I knew Mark Slaughter's best friend, who had introduced me to Mark prior to this. And when Mark came into the mix, I remember Vinny's manager calling me up saying, David, he said, you got to see this guy, Mark Slaughter. He looks like a cross between the Karate Kid and Eddie Van Halen. And if you look at early pictures of Mark Slaughter, that's a great description.
That's funny.
Because it's exactly what he looked like. He could really, really sing. I mean, he was the perfect choice. He was a great-looking guy. He was young. He had the energy, and he could sing.
Right.
Well,
Still weird, though.
that
Still weird, though, with the whole Robert thing. I mean, Robert was singing,
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love Robert. I've seen Robert recently at a whole bunch of Kiss expos and stuff.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that my wife in particular has taken a real shining for Robert.
I think we all have. We all love Robert.
He was, because I had worked with Bobby Rock on his book, The Boy Is Gonna Rock, that first autobiography, which was about the early Vinnie Vincent years.
Mm-hmm.
We were helping Bob out, and Robert was set right up next to us on our left. Lita Ford was on our right.
Oh, my gosh.
And my wife got into this conversation with Robert, and next thing you know, she's coming over and she's showing me this T-shirt with Robert's artwork on it. She goes, look what Robert gave me. And I was like, really? I've known that guy for 30-some-odd years. He's never given me nothing.
I have nothing either. I'm just telling you. I don't have anything either. And I'm waiting.
You need to hang out with Kim, who will take you around, and she has this way of people just love her.
That is funny. Anyway, so now, Vinnie Vincent, have you talked to him at all, within the last few years? Did you talk to him? Were you at that KISS convention when Robert and him, oh my gosh, amazingly sang together? That was crazy. Robert was crying. I mean, it was so emotional.
No, the last time I saw Vinnie was on that very last tour that they did for the All Systems Go.
Oh, okay.
And everybody just basically parted ways.
Yeah.
And I had maintained a sort of relationship with Mark Slaughter, with Dana Strum, and certainly with Bobby Rock. But with Vinnie, it was we just needed to get away from it. And then I got busy with other bands.
You sure did.
Once I got involved with Britney Fox, that took off, and we got a gold record out of that. And, from there, I was able to get into bands like White Lion, and it wasn't just doing the fan club stuff, but it was bringing in this whole marketing plan of, getting fans to do things to make magazines want to cover the band, to play the video on MTV. I'm going to give you a good example. I was hanging out at a White Lion show with Mike Tramp. He's the lead singer. We were having a good time. We were standing there. We were talking to the ladies, having a good time. We were young guys.
Talking to the ladies, David.
Yeah. Now I'm old. Believe me, ladies don't want to talk to me. But anyway, Mike and I were having a good time. His manager came over and said, David, we have a new video, Radar Love. We need this to go to #1 on MTV. And I said, sure. You know what? I'll get to that next week. I said, but right now, Mike and I, we're kind of hanging out. We're doing our thing.
Just step aside.
His manager said, David, you're not taking this serious. And I said, I am taking this serious. I said, but right now, Mike and I are having a good time. And then he finally said to me, you know what? He said, I'll give you $500 if you can make the video for Radar Love go to #1.
$500, that's it?
Well, then I looked at him and I said, you know what? And I didn't have a penny to my name. But I said, I will bet you $1,000 I can make that video #1 first day it's released.
And
Mike Tramp looked at his manager and said, shake his hand. And we shook our hand. Mike then looked at his manager and said, you know you're going to give David $1,000, don't you? 2 weeks later, the video came out. I got a call from MTV. I knew some people there. They said, hey, David, video, Radar Love, it's going to debut today at #1. Great. I called their management company. I said, hey, guys, look, you owe me $1,000. The video's going to be #1 today. I'd like it in cash.
So I don't have to claim it.
And they were like, how do you know? We haven't got the call. And I was like, well, I knew people too. So it happened. And it was great because one of the guys who managed, it was two different guys that managed White Lion. They did own L'Amour's of Brooklyn, New York. They owned that nightclub. And one of the managers split off and eventually went over to Arista Records. So he brought me on board with a lot of different Arista artists, which was really nice.
Wow. But we got to talk about 1988 because that's when you got connected with the lady, the queen of rock and roll, Joan Jett. So tell us how you got connected with her. She's amazing. I love her.
And I tell you, I have already said that Vinnie Vincent was probably the most talented artist I've ever worked with, but the greatest artist, hands down, nicest, perhaps godlike, or I should say goddess-like, is Joan Jett.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lady with a heart, somebody who knows what she wants. She's got a passion for what she does. I mean, I got hooked up with her, and it was really, I'm going to say by a mistake, because what
that was a great mistake. That was a great mistake.
Oh, it was probably the greatest mistake of my life. The guy who got me started in the music business was a guy by the name of George Stewart. George Stewart was an artist representative for KISS from 1979 till 1983. And then he went on to manage Vinnie Vincent and Ace Frehley after they had left KISS. Well, George had told me sometime around 1986-87 that he was looking to go back on the road and do some stuff, and that he was in negotiations with the people at Blackheart Records, Joan Jett's company. And I thought, well, if George is going to work there, I would like to work there because I love George. And, I mean, George has worked with some of the greatest artists in the world. I mean, he worked, his first job was with Sid Bernstein, who was the guy who brought the Beatles to America.
Yes.
And, you know, then he worked with Jerry Weintraub, who did a whole bunch of promotional stuff with Elvis, Sinatra, Frank, Led Zeppelin, Frank Sinatra, the Four Seasons, all that sort of stuff. But I sent my stuff over to Blackheart, knowing that George was in negotiations with them to go on the road. They ended up hiring me to do Joan's fan club, and they passed on George, which was kind of funny.
Wow. That was an honor for you, though.
It was. And, I sat down with Kenny Laguna, Joan's manager, who was just an incredible guy, great songwriter, great producer. I mean, this guy has been around since the 1950s doing bubblegum stuff. I mean, he's an incredible guy. And when I sat down with Kenny, I explained to him what we were doing with the marketing aspect. And he was telling me how they had a single out, and it started to make some waves, but Sony didn't believe in the song. And it was the song I Hate Myself for Loving You.
Oh, my gosh. They didn't believe in that. Can you believe it?
We started doing some of that grassroots marketing and getting people on the telephone, calling Dial MTV, doing all that stuff. And it became a top 10 hit for her.
Jeez, that's crazy. But see, old school works. I'm sorry. It works. It still works today.
Oh, and I still believe that. I always say that even like if you order something online and they ship something to your house, if they send you a catalog afterwards, it kind of makes the company tangible. It makes it very real for you.
Yeah.
It's just not the same searching everything on the online.
Right.
And this is something that Al will appreciate. If they don't send you a catalog, what are you going to read when you go to the bathroom?
What the hell does that mean? What the,
He doesn't stay in there long enough. I'm just saying. He doesn't. I do.
In the bathroom, David, in the bathroom, I read short stories. Continue.
Wait, like the Sears catalog in the bathroom? Stop it. That was like a 5-day ordeal. Like the Christmas catalog. Can you even imagine? Oh, no. I would get in trouble for that one.
I've made many a wish list in the bathroom.
Oh, that's awesome, David. I really want to meet you. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so you're working with Joan now. Did you go on tour with her as well?
I would go out and I would see different shows.
Mm-hmm.
But Joan was working, and she was touring with some of the greatest artists ever. And I used to always say to them, I don't think I want to go out, because if you're touring with Robert Plant, I want to hang out with Robert Plant. If you're touring with Aerosmith, I want to be in the dressing room with those guys.
Yeah.
But I could still do what I needed to do, and we were always in contact. They would call me. They would let me know what was going on. We would do interviews, from the road, make sure that we had everything in place that we needed. As she was recording, we'd start to formulate the marketing plan of what we were going to do to attack the next record, to get it out there, to get the videos known. I mean, it was always a lot of fun with Joan. I mean, I think one of my favorite memories was she played at the Now Rally. I think it was 1993 in Washington, D.C. on the Mall.
Yeah.
And they estimate that they had more than 250,000 people there.
Oh, my gosh.
And I stood on this little ledge in front of the stage, and I took some pictures, and Joan was up there, and she was performing for all these, people. It was the National Organization of Women. And afterwards, we were sitting backstage, and there was a couple people there, and nobody knew who Joan was. She had just had a new record out called Pure and Simple with a song called Go Home. It's a video for it where it basically showed women protecting themselves, what to do if somebody were to attack them. And you see Joan on the subway basically kicking some guy's ass. And it's a really funny video.
I could see that,
though. It's
though.
a very serious video.
Right.
It's a great song, and as we're watching this video, they're showing it on this big screen in this tent. Some lady looked over and realized it was Joan in the video. And the lady stood up. She hollered, "You go, girl!" Gave her the high five. And I thought I was going to pee myself. I was laughing so hard.
Now, you worked with Joan for a long time, too, and you did her merchandising as well?
Yes, it started off with the fan club stuff. And by the time we got into the early to mid 90s, started taking over the merchandising stuff. By then, merchandising companies got kind of funny, where some of them wanted to sign artists for big advances, or they didn't want to sign them, or they just gave really stupid kind of deals. And I was able to work out deals with local screen printers in my area, and I started designing the shirts, and we started printing the shirts, and I'd ship them out for the tour. She used to do a lot of shows overseas that she never really advertised or talked about. She was one of the first artists who actually went overseas and used to perform for the military.
Wow. Oh, wow.
And I mean, it's like, I have pictures of Joan sitting in a tank with the Army guys with a helmet on and all that stuff in the middle of Afghanistan.
Oh, man. Can I just ask you a question? So I've had the honor to meet Joan a couple of times, and to me, very short time I got to meet her, but just watching her at her shows, to me, it seems like she has the most incredible work ethic. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of that, is her. She is so into her music and what she does and what she believes in. And her manager, Kenny, they've been partners since 1979.
Yeah.
And, now Kenny is married to his wife, Merle. Merle is the person who, back in the 80s, used to be she was the person who would say, hey, Joan, here's what you need to wear. Here's where the fashion trends are. And Merle used to do a lot of that, but even more so, Merle was the person who was very significant in getting Kenny to actually be interested in Joan. Because when Merle first heard that Joan had left the Runaways, she actually said to Kenny one day, this is somebody you need to look at. This is somebody who is going to make history.
That's crazy that she saw that, though,
Well, and it just goes to prove that, and I tell my wife this all the time, women are better people than men.
Yeah, that's kind of true. It's kind of true.
You see things that we don't see. Sometimes you see the obvious before we do.
Well, and vice versa, though, because, I have to say, and I'm sure your wife will say the same about you, sometimes Al will point something out to me, and I have to agree that he's right. Sometimes, not a lot. It's mostly me. But, that's why when you have a good partnership, no matter who you're with, it just works out that both of you can see things that the other one doesn't.
Oh, yeah. My wife sees if I do a really lousy job mopping the floor, she will point that out.
Oh, my God. So what happened with you and Joan's work relationship? When did that dissolve? What happened there?
Actually, it never has.
Oh, okay.
We don't... when they need me, they call me. When they come to town, I call them. I don't want to say that it ever really ended. We just got to the point where about the time that the internet really started to take off, I want to say like early 2000s, you started to realize that fan clubs really weren't the wave of the future, at least not in the traditional sense that they were.
Yeah.
Back in, I think it was 1998, I had actually started JoanJett.com, and I got that for them, and we set it up. We started to put news up on it all the time. People would go to it. It's a very crude website. But sometime around 2006, Kenny's daughter, Carrie Ann, she came in. Joan is her godmother.
Oh, wow.
She came in, and she came from her college-educated background. She was young. She was full of energy. She knew all the new stuff. And it was a really good transition to move her into putting things in her control as far as Blackheart goes.
Yeah.
And so we turned over the website to them. We, kind of moved all the information that we had on JoanJett.com over to JoanJettBadRep.com. And we at least kept all that history that was there. So if you look at JoanJettBadRep.com, there's about 20, 25 years of Joan Jett history that you can go down and keep looking at. But it is a very old school website. It's very old school looking, I should say.
But it's cool, though. I love it.
Yeah, and I don't really want to change it because it represents, the past, but it's also the history of what Joan has done, and it's a great little look back into her career. So you can go back to, December of 2002, and you can see all the different articles and things that were done on Joan at that time. It's a very cool little thing, and so I continue to update that. I keep that for them when they need things. Like I said, they'll call me. We do stuff. I have a lot of respect for Joan. Every time I see her, it's like seeing my big sister almost.
Aww.
And, you know, and saying that it's like seeing my big sister, I had recently recounted online one of my favorite memories from getting married back in 1993. I had a sister who was severely handicapped. She had, at the time we used to say severely retarded. She had severe brain damage. She had cerebral palsy. She didn't really talk. She would communicate with people, but she loved music. And at my wedding, I'll never forget, Joan had come in. The DJ started to play I Hate Myself for Loving You. My sister loved that song. Talk about somebody who, her and I got the music bug in the family. She could pick a hit, which was really nice for me when I was younger, because if she heard something and she liked it, I knew it was going to be a hit.
See how that works? Teamwork.
But my sister, not knowing who Joan was, because she didn't know who people were, she didn't care who people were.
Yeah.
She saw you for who you were. And she walked right up to Joan Jett, interrupted her talking to me, grabbed Joan's hands, and made her clap and dance to her own song.
Oh.
And when they got finished, you know, my sister gave Joan a really big hug. And that was one of the things that, here is somebody who could not communicate with people verbally, but she knew good people when she saw good people.
Yeah.
And she liked Joan so much that she hugged her, because my sister was the type of person that if she came around you, she knew if she could sense if you were scared because she was different.
Right.
But that didn't bother her. But she knew if you just didn't like her, or you didn't want anything to do with her. But with Joan Jett, man, she just threw her arms around her and gave her that real big bear hug. And I thought, oh, my God, my sister's going to hurt Joan.
But you know what, though, like Mark just said, the power of music. And it's so true, because that's what we talk about here constantly. Every single week that we're on, whenever we're on, it's all about music bringing everyone together. And just the fact that you've been able to, you've had the honor really to work with Joan Jett, which is pretty amazing. And, you know, just somebody like me who just looks, you know, from afar, from the stage, and looks at the type of person she is, you can tell she's a good person. You can tell she has a great work ethic, and you can tell she just, listen, this is about the music. She's all about the music and the people too, her fans too. She loves her fans. You can tell.
Yeah. And I tell you, I'm still the same way. I love it when we go to shows, watching the shows, watching the performers, especially younger artists that are really hungry, because it takes me back to my younger days.
Yeah.
And it's like, as great as it is to go see Guns N' Roses now, well, I saw Guns N' Roses in 1988.
Yeah, a little different now, right?
From 1988 to... So, you know, back then they were dangerous. You know,
right.
It was fun. You didn't know if they were going to destroy the place, incite a riot, or what was going to go on. But it was Guns N' Roses was here, and you were there.
But who didn't destroy the place, though, David, was Nelson, the Nelson brothers in 1990. Now, when you worked with them, was this before or after they released After the Rain?
I got involved right after the Rain came out. I was hired to take over the fan club that they had started. They had hired some friends of the family, and it became so overwhelming for them that they didn't know how to handle it.
Wow.
And it got to the point where things were so backed up. The band was right in the middle of the tour. They had a hit album that was going on. So I got a call from Larry Mazer, who was Nelson's original manager. I went up to New Jersey to meet with him. And at the time, Larry Mazer, if you don't know, He was the guy who was responsible for Cinderella's success.
I love Cinderella.
He also managed Kiss in the early 90s. I mean, Larry's had some really heavyweight artists under his belt. I met with him. We talked about it. We negotiated the deal. And I came home, and they shipped me a truck. And I literally mean a truck full of fan mail.
Oh, my
gosh. It took me weeks to go through this. And this was unopened fan mail.
Oh, my gosh.
And spent a lot of time, did all of that stuff, went through it all. And the initial agreement was, I'll fix your mess. I will help you with the marketing for your next couple videos. We'll put out some newsletters. But after that, moving forward, I will do the fan club. And that's going to be mine. And we agreed to it. Everything was good. Well, I took some time. I straightened it all out. And a couple months down the line, after we were finally good, I went back to management and I said, hey, guys, look, I got everything straightened out. We're now ready to move forward. Here's what I need to set up a new fan club and to get this thing in motion moving forward. And that's when they said, you know what? The guys just hired new business management, and this isn't going to happen. They decided that they need to cut their losses.
Oh, my God. Oh, that was like a knife in the heart. I can feel it from here.
Yeah, and it was like, wow. And I was, very hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, I was used to bands getting together, success happening, bands breaking up. I mean, those things happen. But here I worked for a couple months, did all this stuff, and now I was finally ready to move forward to actually make some money, and I'm told, thank you, but no thanks.
Now, had you gotten paid for doing that?
Funny that you asked, because I did not. And
David, are you kidding me? Like, you didn't have a contract or anything?
No, I had a verbal agreement, which I'm going to be honest with you. It's like in the music business,
oh my God,
you manage somebody. Do you really need a contract? Because if they're going to fire you, they're going to fire you. It just happens.
Oh my gosh.
And
I can't.
I was very upset about it. And, I really believed in what I was doing. And for the first time and only time in my life, I sued a band.
Oh, you did?
I took them to court, and I went in. I sued them. I also named their manager in the lawsuit only because their manager I knew was not responsible for it. And I didn't want to name him in it, but my attorney said, you name the manager because he will verify your story. And sure enough, came to court. The Nelson twins did not show up. They had hired attorneys. And I went in and I explained to the judge what had happened. Their former manager got up. He explained everything that I pretty much did. I also had taken in a couple boxes of the fan mail that they had sent me because I had kept all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And we did let the judge know that we had a truck sitting outside if he wanted to see the rest of it.
Oh, my gosh.
We got to the end of the decision, and the judge said to me, he said, David, he said, I can only give you what you asked for. He said, but you really sold yourself short. You should have asked for more money.
I'm shaking my head, just so you know. I'm shaking my head.
Yeah, and I won the lawsuit, which was great. But then just because you win a lawsuit doesn't mean that you ever get paid.
Don't even say it.
Oh, yeah. So that went on for a couple years. Before they were getting ready to release their next record, I had an injunction filed in Maryland that said they could not release a record here through a major record company until I was paid. Then I hired a lawyer in New York City who filed an injunction in New York State that restricted them to release the record in New York.
Oh, yeah, that'll hurt.
Then I have filed one in California.
Oh, my God. Yeah, just go for the big guns. Why not? I mean, but that had to cost you a ton of money.
Well, the California lawyer called me, and he said, hey, David, look, they really want you to go away. And I said, sure.
Sure they do.
So he told me they're willing to offer you $1,000 to walk away.
You're kidding me right now, David.
No, I'm dead serious.
$1,000.
Well, now here's the funny thing was I told the attorney, I didn't even have to think about it. I just said, tell them yes, but I have a couple conditions. On the next release, on the inner sleeve or inner booklet, whatever it is, on the CD, which at the time was the format, in 12-point type on the back cover, it must say in all capital letters and bold print, very special thank you to David Snowden. And the attorney said to me, you are absolutely crazy to do that. Why would you give up that to have your name on a record? And I said, well, that I don't care about. I've been thanked on hundreds of records. That's fine. That's my term. He called me back within an hour, and he said, David, I got all your money plus the interest. How did you know?
All right, wait a minute. So they said, listen, we're going to pay you what you sued us for because we don't, interest. Plus interest because we don't want your name on our records.
Absolutely. I mean, think about any artist that's out there.
Wow, interesting.
And I'm not going to blame any of the artists because sometimes you don't know what management's telling them versus the artist because sometimes, you know, in the case of the Nelson twins, we had some direct contact, but not a lot. Wasn't like I went on tour with them. It wasn't like we hung out. It wasn't like we were sitting there talking to the ladies. That didn't happen with the Nelson twins.
Yeah.
A lot of it went through management. So you don't know what management might be telling them versus the record company versus business managers, which are totally different than the personal managers versus the road manager versus the band guys, all of that sort of stuff. You don't know what is translating back down to them.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure they probably didn't even know about half of it, 3/4 of it.
Well, they knew enough that, you know, they didn't want to talk to me, but they also didn't want to thank me on a record when they were going to have to pay me money.
Right.
But I did eventually get that money, and, you know, I always tell everybody I live in the house that Nelson built, so thank you very much.
It's better than $1,000, I will say that.
Yeah, but it wasn't like hundreds of thousands of dollars or anything like that. I mean, I'm not going to exaggerate what it was. It wasn't a great deal of money, but it was more of the principle that when I've always believed and I was raised on, you work hard and you do what you have to get ahead, but don't cheat people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what was happening there. Whether they realized it or not, that's what happened.
Well, all right. Now, going back to Kiss, though, because you did go back and you did do merchandising with Kiss, but you also worked with Peter Criss's ex-wife, Lydia, for her book, Sealed with a Kiss. Now, you went through a lot of her personal photographs and items of her time with the band. What was the most memorable thing you found when you were going through all of that with her?
Well, the naked pictures of Lydia.
Okay, then. Well, hi. All right.
Yeah, hello. That's what I said. Now, Lydia had, I say that, but that is very true. That's not just kidding. But, you know, 70s were definitely a very different time, very free spirit. But Lydia had, it was 8 big boxes that were brought to my house, originally by the original publisher who was going to put out her book.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought this stuff over, and the idea was I was going to scan everything in the book. I was going to clean up the pictures, and then I was going to do all the layout and design, and we were going to move this book forward.
Mm-hmm.
And no sooner did he drop it off, I got to work on it for about a month or two. He filed bankruptcy.
Wow.
Well, the book wasn't going to happen then. Well, I had to track Lydia down. I eventually tracked her down, and I said, hey, all your stuff's at my house. And we talked. I ended up making a trip to New York, took all the stuff back, and at the time she wasn't really sure what to do. And because she was counting on this publisher to basically produce a book for her.
Yeah.
And it's not even so much the layout and design, but it's the where do we get it printed, what kind of paper, is it going to be a hardcover or a soft cover, how are we going to do all this? It was all the nitty-gritty. And I sat in her living room. Actually, I was sitting on her coffee table that Gene Simmons gave her. It looked like a big tree kind of that was cut. Interesting coffee table.
Yeah, that's
so much
cool.
that,
That's cool.
Yeah. So I said to her, I was like, this is a cool coffee table. Where'd you get this from? She goes, Gene Simmons. I was like, okay. But we talked about it, and I said to her, oh, Lydia, we can do this. I work in graphic design, so I know how this works. And this is what we'll do. And her and we talked about it. I took a whole bunch of pictures of a bunch more stuff that she had. A couple weeks later, she came to my house. She came down from New York to Baltimore. She brought blueprints of the 1977 Kiss stage show that they took over to Japan,
Wow.
which was incredible.
Yeah.
The original blueprints.
Oh, my gosh.
She had all kind of cool stuff, different jewelry that Peter wore in a lot of famous photographs.
Oh,
she
my
had pieces
gosh.
of his costumes. She had her original wedding ring, and just so many behind the scenes back, without makeup pictures. She just had some really, really cool stuff. A lot of articles.
What struck you, though? What sticks out in your mind most from what you got to see?
It's hard to say. It was so much, and being such a big fan, but at the same time, my brain kind of switches. It goes from fan mode to a business or a production mode, depending on what it is that I'm doing.
Yeah.
If you kind of understand what I mean.
No, I do. I do.
Yeah, it's like, even I'm going to use the Nelson twins as an example. Regardless of what happened, I don't have any hard feelings. What happened, happened. That's just life. And, when I'm looking at stuff business-wise, I try to separate one from the other. So when Lydia said to me, hey, look, we're going to do this, and I need you to help me do this, my brain kind of switched. So as cool as it was to see all of that stuff, she had her original People's Choice Award that she accepted on television for Beth.
Wow.
That was pretty cool. She had the original gold record for Beth sitting up on her fireplace mantle.
That's cool.
I actually brought it home because it was falling apart, and I fixed it for her, and then took it back. She had a whole bunch of just so many cool things. She had and I still say it's the coolest thing, and I told her, I said, Lydia, please, if there's anything you ever want to leave to me when you're gone. She had a Beatles White Album that was autographed by Paul McCartney.
Oh,
really
my gosh. And apparently you're a big Beatles fan.
Huge. But I love the Beatles. And Lydia did work for Bob Gruen, who did a lot of those famous pictures of John Lennon, like him in the New York City T-shirt, that white T-shirt in front of the Statue of Liberty.
Yep.
Lydia did work for him for many years.
Gosh.
And, So I spent about 2 years with Lydia as we went back and forth, and we got her book together. And it was a really great experience. I love the lady to death. I mean, she drove me crazy. I probably drove her crazy, but that's okay. We still see each other. Recently, went up to New York, and we had dinner with her and her husband, Richie, and I said husband, boyfriend. Don't want to mistake that. But, yeah, we had a dinner together. We had a great time.
Do you think Peter and Ace will get a chance to be on this End of the Road tour, or do you think not?
If I were Gene and Paul, if I managed a band, I would not let them.
Really? Really?
I love Ace. I love Peter, but one of the things that has kept the Kiss machine rolling is that when somebody fell down, they picked up somebody who was stronger. And that is what any good business has always done over the years. Somebody retires and, you work at a company for so many years, you see this guy there and you think, oh my God, they can never replace him. Guy drops dead. Well, somebody's in his seat the next day. Yeah, they pick up and you move right on. Kiss has done the same thing. They've always found people that were a lot better. When Peter was fired from Kiss, they got Eric Carr. Better drummer, powerhouse drummer. It's incredible. Ace left. They picked up Vinnie Vincent. He came in. He wrote an album and a half's worth of material for them.
Yeah.
Made them a stronger band. Vinnie, got fired. Bruce Kulick came in, took them to the next level, got them through the 80s. Incredible guitar player, perfect guy for the band. Kiss reunion. Yeah, it worked out pretty good. It was great to see him. But there was triggers on the drums. It wasn't quite the same. The magic was there. But then now you bring in Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer. Huge, both of them, huge Kiss fans, but better players than what Ace or Peter were. And I'm not knocking Ace and Peter because Ace and Peter created the magic that was Kiss with Gene and Paul.
Right.
But just to go out there, sustain, and to do a tour like what they're doing right now, I wouldn't have them back. I'd have Tommy and Eric, because why short-cheat people?
No, I agree. But, even because I always talk about this with Journey and Steve Perry, even though I really know I've come to terms with myself that Steve Perry's not going back to Journey. Okay, I get it. But like Ace and Peter, even Vinnie, I know Vinnie's not going to happen, but you would think that you read that fans want to even just see a little slice of them on the stage. And I get they're not going to do a full tour with Kiss. It's not going to happen. But, you always think about, hey, will they bring them like here or there, a couple of shows, pop them out for a few minutes and let fans go bananas and, Well,
I think that it was different in 1985 when they did Kiss Unplugged.
Yeah.
Because it was Kiss without the makeup.
Right.
Now we're talking about Kiss with the makeup, and I love Ace. Ace was always my favorite member of Kiss. If I were Ace, to be able to, to want to walk back up on the stage, is he going to put on that spaceman makeup? And you have Tommy Thayer there doing the spaceman makeup. Who's doing the lead guitar? Who's not? Is he singing? Is he just there to... No.
Yeah, you're right. We don't want to confuse everyone.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work for me.
And, you talk about moving on and getting bigger and better things. Well, David Lee Roth is now out of, opening for Kiss. What did you think about that when you heard they were replacing him with an artist?
It didn't. I guess what surprised me was Gene's comments about David Lee Roth being past his heyday.
Yeah.
And, that's a little tough because that's like saying go see Kiss now and then go back and watch a video of Kiss from 1975.
Right.
1975, they killed.
Right.
They were a badass band. They were the band to be afraid of. Now, 50 years later, it's kind of hard to compete with that. And I get what Gene's saying, but I got to be totally honest. Why not just come out and tell people, look, the artist was cheaper than Dave?
Oh my God, it's all about the money, honey, right? I mean, it does. It does come down to that a lot of times, right? Well, and Dave was, let's face it, Dave was getting a lot of slack, and the performances I had seen of Dave, I'm like, wow, this is yeah.
And
Vince Neil, like Vince Neil. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw Van Halen back in the heyday with Dave.
Right.
And even then, and we're talking about what, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
Looking back at that, David Lee Roth was not the best singer. He was a heck of a showman.
Right.
But not a great singer.
Yeah.
Hell. But that's also showbiz. It's about entertaining people. It's about making them happy.
But, an artist, that kind of confused me. I'm sorry. Let's watch this guy paint before Kiss comes on. I just, I'm sure it's going to be well done and all of that. I don't know. But now, do you really think this is the end of the road for Kiss, or there's more? God, and I'm going to get crucified for this, but I hope so. I hope it is the end. Yeah.
Because at some point, you have to realize when it is time to leave that party. They're a legendary band. They're going to carry on forever. I love the Rolling Stones, but there's another band. Do you need to go back out on tour again? It seems all great. You're there. You're in the moment, but it's just not the same anymore. Because seeing Kiss now and then going back, and especially like you've seen them in the 80s, and I'm sure they will defend this by saying, well, in the 80s, we weren't wearing 8-inch platform heels. We were wearing tennis shoes, and we could jump around and we could dance around. Well, sure, but you were doing that in the 70s, too. But you're not doing it in 2021 because you're almost 70 years old.
Isn't that crazy to even say those words? Like, say that number. It's just crazy.
Yeah, and what makes it even crazier is that when you start to think about it and you go, damn, he might be my dad.
Or we could put the grand in front of that. But so David, now you've worked with an enormous amount of bands. Looking at the time you started working with these bands through to today, what is the one thing you can sit back and feel satisfied and say, listen, that was my dream. I did that. I'm good.
God, I'd probably say just about all of it. Mm-hmm. And I only say that because it's like any other job. You get up, you do it every day, but you don't think about it. And after Al called me the other day and I talked to him about, talking to you on the show, I started to think about it, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I had forgotten so many things that I had done. So you start to realize that, wow, it's been really nice, but I don't, at the same time, it's like I get up in the morning and I walk into my office and it's a hallway coming down, and the hallway is lined with just gold and platinum records and things. And then I come in and sit in my office and it's the same thing, but I don't look at it and go, you know what, I'm kind of a big shot. Because if I ever get to that point, all I have to do is walk downstairs and say something to my wife, and she reminds me that I'm really not.
Slap you upside the head and say, listen, you're David.
Exactly. Even when we got together, she didn't understand what a lot of it was.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, the first time that I introduced her to Mark Slaughter, she said to me, Mark was like my teenage idol, because there's about 9 years in difference in age between my wife and myself, and she's 9 years younger, of course. So Mark was her teen heartthrob. And I told Mark that, and Mark, he kind of blushed, and he was just like, God, that's so sweet. And then we went out and saw him on one of their shows. He let us stand on the side of the stage. It started to rain. It was an outdoor show. So Mark and Dana grabbed Kim, and they escorted her into the van. Of course, they left me standing in the rain. They didn't care about me.
Yeah, that would be me. They would escort Alan to the van, and I would be left on the side of the stage in the rain. That's exactly what would happen. I understand.
You and I are standing there wet.
Yeah, I know.
And then I go to get in the van, and I was like, what the hell, guys? And Kim says to me, David, she goes, God, she goes, I feel like I'm family. Mark Slaughter turned around, looked at her, and said, he is family.
Oh, that's so cute. Well, David, we thank you so much for hanging out with us and really giving us some pretty cool behind-the-scenes stories, talking a lot of Kiss stuff and Joan Jett and Mark Slaughter and Nelson. I really appreciate you taking the time to just, give us a different perspective. And we really, really appreciate it. Say hi to Baltimore for us. And we appreciate you, everything you've done. And thank you so much.
Oh, if you ever need anything, you give me a holler, okay?
Thank you, David. Have an awesome night.
Thank you. Take care now.